Okay, so before I thought about it, and before I get into this sharing of this next strange experience, I thought I'd better give a bit of background, because the background's quite necessary. As I said in my previous video, I was on a mission. At that time I was a Christian. Obviously in that statement I'm saying I'm not anymore. I don't consider myself anything anymore. But at that time I was a Christian, and I was at a stage in my life where I was a bit disillusioned by it all. And I could tell stories about how I got to being disillusioned, and perhaps one year I might. But for now, it's in my own personal journey, and what I was observing, the Christian culture and belief systems, there was just hypocrisy, really. And to be truthful, I think Christianity, and I think all religion, is just a place where individual personalities can feel comfortable in their routines. One of the things that I found with Christianity was that it has this belief in Jesus is coming back to set up his kingdom on the planet, stop the bullying and the corruption, and give people a chance to actually be humans without all this lack of freedom, and without the bully aspect, pushing people around. I understand that aspect now. Back then, though, it was a bit more black and white. But anyhow, I thought, well, you see, to me, it wasn't the message of Jesus or even of the God of the Old Testament that I sort of gave up on. It was the Christian interpretation of those messages. And at the time, like in, say, 1982, there's sort of jokes circulating the internet at the moment about there's different dates that have been set up for end times and rapture times and this time and that time, and people putting their hopes and beliefs into being saved, from the bullies, from the rulers, from the powers that be, from the Illuminati, from the rich families to which the world is indebted to financially. And it's very easy for people to get a grasp of their powerlessness, and it's easy for people to take that sense of powerlessness, victimhood, and use it to their advantage to bring people into congregate them into particular churches, and from there feed their flock with hopeful stories. And they're designed to keep people hoping in a future while they're having to contribute and partake of a system which is corrupt and evil, and therefore, in a sense, what occurs is, because people are here on the planet, short of suicide, you're stuck with what you've got. Okay, and so if you're in a situation where you become religious, say, in order to temper the consciousness, or the conscious in terms of, hey, this is what Jesus said, and hey, this is what the system wants you to do. So in order to keep your conscious in a particular place, you need Jesus to be coming back to sort out the problem that you have no power to sort out. So in that way, you justify having to use the evil system while you wait for Jesus to come back and sort it, and free you from the system. Now, why I stepped away from Christianity was because I could see ways in which human beings, we could sort our shit out without having Jesus come back and do it for us. And where I saw that idea was in the actual words that I read, which are attributed to Jesus. So so it kind of got more and more difficult to see how we're given specific information which can help us to transform the system, and that information is not activated. It is subversed through more information which says it's not going to happen, given your best intentions, so Jesus is coming back to do it sometime. Only the Father knows when. And so what's and what occurs then is you can keep people in a belief system for 1,000-2,000 years, etc., etc., because they have to keep hoping, but no man knows the hour, and so this can go on indefinitely. Well, once upon a time perhaps, but now we know how small and fragile our planet is compared to the rest of the galaxy, let alone the universe. And we have no real new frontiers. There's still things to explore on the planet and explore by telescope out into the cosmos. But in general, we're not just separate tribes anymore. We're one big tribe, all connected now with the internet. And so I had to step out of that in my own good conscience, and as a result I became isolated. Some of my Christian friends no longer wanted to be friends, and all I did in stepping out really was to sets of circumstances again led me to this place of having a clear choice: stick with the system or move out of the system and see what would happen. And what I mean by moving out of the system is basically what is quoted in the Bible. I couldn't tell you the chapters and numbers or even the book, but it was something attributed to Jesus, which when he was talking to his disciples, he said, go out into the world. He says, don't take extra clothing or carry a bag even, and don't take money. He says, go out into the world telling people about what I told you, and don't worry about where you're going to get your next meal or how you're going to be clothed. Those things will be taken care of. And in the sense, he says, look at the birds. They don't worry about where they're going to get their next meal, etc., etc. Or the lilies, how well clothed they are. The Father, and he was talking about a God concept. The Father takes care of them. The Father will take care of you. So I thought, here I'm in a situation where I have that choice. So I took that choice, and in taking that choice, I discovered, in a sense, the science behind that. I discovered, indeed, that you do get taken care of on a daily basis. And this is when my internal subjective reality started to merge with the greater objective shared reality of what we call the external. So these two are starting to sync up. So I'll probably talk. I'm keeping these short to about 10 minutes. Here I am looking at my watch, which I haven't even got a watch. Timeless. Okay, so I'm not sure if so what was occurring for me, and what started to slowly develop in my understanding, was that Jesus, when he talked about the Father as a God concept, was not referring to the Old Testament God. And so I started to see that the Old Testament God was a corruption or a veil in front of what God is really. And God is nothing like any religion is saying. But at that time, I still had this duality thing going on, this good and evil, rah. And I started to distance myself away from those types of concepts associated with any God concepts, really. But the more violent ones, the bully ones, the ones that ruled with the rod, the iron rod, they were all man-made concepts in order to keep control of the particular tribes they led. And I started to see that within the storyline of the Bible there were incidences where there was an obvious enemy of God, and so there was this conflict happening in a kind of that involved just not just this physical universe, but within this physical universe and upon this planet Earth, the conflict had to do with something called God and something called the devil, or something called Jehovah and something called Lucifer, or Jehovah, or the Islam God. So we've got this thing, battle going on, in which human beings have become involved with directly, and are influenced by. So I had this kind of anger, and how something needed to be done about this. So I'm doing what I can, my little bit, and so I'm off around on the road, hitching around, not carrying any money, and just having to see what happens, really, serendipity of it all. And every day I was cared for, or looked after. I didn't have to sleep out in the cold. Sometimes I had to use my own initiatives. Other times I might have knocked on the door of priests or the presbytery of the Protestant branch of Christianity, to see if I could stay over at there, them hosting me. And oftentimes they had ample reason why they couldn't. They disagreed with what I called myself at the time. I was calling myself a disciple of Jesus, and going around praying for this country, or specifically for the South Island of New Zealand, and praying for the kingdom to come. And basically the prayer was very simple and the same, in the sense that I just said, whatever it takes to have the kingdom of God on earth, may it be done in the hearts and the lives of individuals of this community. I wasn't, in that sense, praying for Jesus to come back and make it all better. I was praying for people to wake up and start to make it better for each other, for themselves. So, the big wall that prevents that from happening, that realization, is this counterfeit God concept. So my anger was against that, and so that was portrayed as Lucifer, but more importantly, in the sense of my story, is that I had come to see that the gods of the old, or the God of the Old Testament, was Lucifer. And so I had this real, almost a hatred for this individual, for making things so difficult for humanity. So that's the background, that's the attitude I had, an anger and almost hatred, which is somewhat, when I think about the term almost hatred, what am I saying? Was it hatred or not? Certainly I was angry. And when, as I shared in my last video, the strange experience happened in Karaman, in a place I was on my own, in a sense trespassing, but it's alright, it was a Christian hostel, so I figured the Christians would forgive me my trespass. But this is where the incident happened, and this being came, and I unreservedly decided there and then that I'd been excuse me, paid a visit by Lucifer, and that Lucifer was real, and making it known that he was on to me, my little project. That's where my mind was at the time, and it kind of was exciting and scary and all the rest of it, all bundled up at once. So a few months later, and I can't really put a time on it, but I had we'd moved, I had a wife and a child, and we'd all moved from the East Coast, Christchurch, to the West Coast, a little town called Blackpool. And it was there that this next incident happened. We were renting a small house, and we sort of settled in Blackpool, but I was still, by this time I'd come back into the system, but I brought in that concept, you can't lose it anyway, of being sort of synced with external, internal sync. So things were more scripted in a sense. They weren't random, and I was in touch with the inner, was in touch with the outer, and it made sense. So I think now's the time here to, now that I've painted that background of where I was at, I will express the story now of what occurred. So I'd like to stress now that apart from my early childhood nightmares I used to have, I never had experiences that I can remember. These experiences started to happen and sit and stay in my conscious awareness after I was converted to Christianity. That's when these experiences started to happen. So this experience I'm going to share now was, as I say, I was in Blackpool on the west coast of the South Island, and this particular night I was asleep with my wife in bed next to me, and our son in an adjoining room. I've made a little map here. There's the bed, our room. It's quite a small little room, and out here it's a sunroom. Joined sliding doors here, and well, glass sliding doors, and a wee curtain partition here where just partitioned off the lounge area. And this particular night I woke up and I'm not even sure what woke me, and I could see from my position on the bed my son's room, and it was all glowing with a kind of a blue electric light, very similar to the that light, that beam me up light, you know, all sparkling, and that part Star Trek light. So his room was full of it, and I sort of, just as I comprehended this weird happening, I heard the laugh. Now that laugh I talked about in my last video, that deep classic evil laugh, and I'm like, that got my attention, and it was coming from this area here by the curtain, the foot of the bed. And when I looked over, I saw the entity, the being, which I for some reason saw it as a male. It was male. It was small, as in stature, because I'm lying on the bed, so it was about so high from the floor, maybe, I don't know how many, 3.5 feet, something like that. But anyway, even from where I could see clearly, the being was bald, had big dark eyes, not as big as your classic Zeta reticuli, or whatever, you know, the Zeta, the grey alien, more humanoid looking than that, but ancient wrinkles, just unbelievable. You could tell just by looking that this being was old, and it had his arms over and crossed over him like that, and he was standing there looking at me, and I was lying there looking back at him, and immediately I thought, here we go, it's the devil, it's Lucifer. I had no doubt in my mind. So this is all happening within a space of a minute. Right, this being, he's got a grey robe on. I can't see beneath the bed, but he begins to obviously levitate, float towards me, and he's like that. He's like this, floating towards me. And as he's doing it, coming towards me, I'm like, there was a lot of emotion. I've had 25, 26 years to analyse this, the whole deal. So my emotion at the time, there was a part of me, sort of a warrior part of me, staunch, and that was the part that was projecting at this being. There was another part of me which was my body, intelligence, if you like. My body, all my body wanted to do was get the hell out of there, climb the walls, get away. So I could feel this part of the fear side, not wanting to know about it. Get away. Where another aspect of me was confronting this violation, basically, coming at me, and I was being held down again. That held down. I think that's where the violation was, and the sense of violation was being forcibly held down, can't move, by some invisible force, while this creature is coming towards me, floating towards me. And as he was approaching, his hand was starting to come out to touch me. He was getting close, and all this time I was like, I couldn't move and I could hardly speak. I'm trying to form an answer. Basically what I was saying is, this was practically what I said, was, what do you want, you ugly bastard? He's coming towards me. Not stopping. I said, then I apologised. I said, no, I'm sorry. Even you have a father. Okay, now, what I was saying in a sense, and all that was that I saw this being as Lucifer, and Lucifer was pretending to be God, but even he had a father, so he wasn't a bastard. So there was a kind of little bit of humour in there as well, in all of this. Right, I'm acknowledging he exists, yes, I'm acknowledging that he's not God, the Father, that he was himself created. Yeah, he's getting closer, and his hands is coming out, and I says, and you can go, you can leave right now. And as I said the word now, I sat up, right, and by this time he's right in my face, his hands coming out, and I put my face right into his face, and I, now, and at that moment, he disappeared. The light wasn't in the room, in my son's room anymore. But there was something else that was happening at that time. As this being was putting his arm out to touch me, and I just didn't want to go there, I didn't want that happening, I managed to, in my fury, push myself up from that force that was holding me down, break through it, get real face to face with this being, this entity. But just before that, as his hand was coming out, he was only like not that far from me, like a foot. I could see clearly into his eyes. His eyes were the most compelling thing about him, and he looked right into me, to my very soul, for want of a better word. And in that instant I knew that this personality knew me more than I ever knew myself. I can't even explain how I knew that. But I guess if you know, even with human beings, when we look at each other in the eye and we sort of drop down our guards, or we've got this kind of trust, we can read what's in the eye. There's something in the eye that we can read and acknowledge, and sort of, we just know. And it's not often, because human beings don't often get that personal except when they're in love or something. But you know, getting back and speaking of love, this not only was the message that was coming through these eyes, was that I was known, that was just felt, but also that I was loved by this being. This being just loved me to bits. There was no doubt. Okay, that you can start to see what's happening here. And all of that information stayed, bang, in the moments that it happened, and it hasn't left, and it's basically, in that sense, what was occurring. I probably want to talk about that more in other videos, but what I saw, which I feel I need to mention right now, is that it's like two images, like in photography, which are superimposed. I was in, and I think that's what hypnagogic and sleep paralysis and astral and all of that are about. Excuse me. It's about this reality that we call reality, solid physical universe, and another reality merge, or they superimpose on each other, creating a kind of maybe a third reality of sorts, right? But it's real nonetheless. And this incident happened, and then it was up to me for the next 25 or 6 years to sort out what exactly